My name is Latoya Hankins. I am the current National Vice President of Gamma Xi Phi, the Fraternity for Artists and Creators. And tonight we are joined by members of the mental health community as well as the artistic community to talk about an issue which unfortunately impacts so many people, and that is the idea or the realization of the impact that suicide has on so many lives, whether directly or indirectly. So we're going to have a brief PowerPoint that gives a little bit about the occasion, about the presenters that we are going to be having as part of the program, also a little bit of Gamma Xi Phi. Following the PowerPoint, we're going to get into a series of questions and answers and conversations. So again, thank you for joining us, and we will go ahead and get the program started with, again, a brief PowerPoint. And so as you can see that we have tonight a conversation about mental health and artistic expression with Shalondra Hollins and Pamela Bond. Gamma Xi Phi is, again, an international fraternity for artists and creators, and you can see that we've been around since October 7th, 2010, and you see that we have founding principles of philanthropy, sodality, and elevation. This event is part of our national program that we focus on 5 components of service, wellness, edification, advocacy, and recognition, known collectively as I Swear. Tonight we have Shalonda Hollins, who is the founder and CEO of Serena Life Counseling and Wellness, where she serves as a licensed marriage and family therapist and board certified mental health provider. She is a well-versed mental health professional, and she has a bevy of experience, which I'm looking forward to learning from her as she shares her professional input and insight. Joining her is Sister Pamela Bond, who is a member of the Theta chapter, which is the sponsoring chapter of tonight's event. She is a noted creative who has produced or participated in several local productions, as well as national production as well. And she is currently a professor at North Carolina Central and UNC Chapel Hill. Just a brief, just a brief recognition of those who have been lost, and I'll use loss, which is the appropriate term, to suicide. So I'll just invite Ms. Hollins just to start us off with some questions and response concerning how suicide has impacted those in the community, particularly the artistic community.
Sure. Thank you so much for having me. And my hope is that we can have an open conversation about suicide, and hopefully not in a way that feels clinical or distant, but in a way that recognizes the humanity of the creative community, because talking about it, breaking that silence, is a way for us to really take an important step towards prevention and healing. So I'll start with talking a little bit about stigma and expression that people who are engaged in creative fields such as performing and visual arts. They seem to be more susceptible to suicidal ideation based on media portrayals. And so kind of talking a little bit about that, and if that's a fair assessment, and if so, what could possibly be some of the causes behind it. And I'll start first if you'd like for me to,
Yeah.
Pam.
Mhm.
I'll say that there is some, because I think you probably could speak more to what you see in the creative field. And I'll say from a
Yes.
therapeutic perspective, there's some truth to that assessment, but it's also important to understand the context. So, creative people, whether it be in fashion, visual arts, or theater, are often very deeply in touch with emotion. And that sensitivity is something that makes creative work so powerful. But it also means that people feel more intensely. And so you add that along with the pressure of performing or work opportunities that may ebb and flow in the creative space. And it presents a different kind of level of instability. So there may be also this expectation to constantly produce something new, and then this becomes overwhelming. And so, what I'll often see in my space, as far as therapy, is that people are contending with those pressures on top of this additional layer of stigma. And so, while people might be praised for their creative talent, they're sometimes discouraged from expressing vulnerability or asking for help. And so, when that support's not present, combined with the sensitivity, pressure, isolation, these can contribute to suicidal ideation.
Yeah, I agree with you. And thank you for having me and understanding what the importance of this topic is in the creative community, because we are very emotional people, and being a group of emotional people, you will definitely understand all of our ebbs and flows. What I have researched and found is that creative people, when we're talking about personality traits, that creative people score usually high on openness and neuroticism. And so when we have that openness, we 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 tend to be open to experiences more and adventures more and what feels good. So we are basically opening ourselves up to our environment as well as our culture and our differences of where we come from. And so we are more, I think, susceptible to drugs. We are more susceptible to getting negative behaviors. So that in and of itself gives us that flow. Sometimes I think we get what we call in the zone, and that's our high, right? And then when we talk about the neuroticism of it all, that's that negative thinking and that low that we're experiencing. And so, and both of those personality traits can be on a spectrum. So where we can have a high openness to adventures and things that we love and in the zone, there could be 20 minutes later when we might have a low in neuroticism, and it's like, what just happened? And even I myself have experienced days where I won't touch a project because I don't feel it. And I know if I don't feel it, or, Brother Rashid, you're a writer, Latoya, you're a writer. And, if you don't feel it, you don't engage in it with that much passion. And because we are very emotional people, we want to use our passion, we want people to feel what we feel. And if we don't feel it, we can't convince others to
Mhm.
feel it. So just having that balance is hard. And like you say, Shalonda, we can get overwhelmed. And once you get overwhelmed, you may sometimes figure there's no way out of that perfection that we sometimes seek to have. We are very, perfected people, and we are very proud of what we do. So we have a tendency to want to do it to the best of our ability. And in the creative community, I see that. I see that. And you can get so perfected that you don't do anything. You get stagnant and you just stop. And there is where we have to find that balance.
Absolutely, absolutely. And speaking of perfectionism, like you said, how it shows up in fashion, different areas of the creative space, and also I imagine you see it in academia as well. Um, what do you think are some of the contributing factors to perfectionism, or kind of how you see it in those spaces? And I'll kind of start with perfectionism. Usually it's hiding behind this language of excellence when mostly it's about fear, and a
Yeah.
fear of failure or a fear of rejection or a fear of not being good enough. And so, one of the main things that I focus on with my work with clients when we address perfectionism is about how do we get out of these cycles of burnout where it's like this constant demand to perform or create or just really to kind of push past someone's limits until their mental and physical health suffer. And then it's
Mm-hmm.
especially true for people of color or people from marginalized communities when they often feel, well, we often feel that we have to work twice as hard to prove ourselves. And so it's okay, how do we kind of balance or counteract some of these pieces? And I'm just curious as to how you see it showing up in the creative space or in academia as well.
The good thing about the creative space and costume designing is what I
Mhm.
focus on. The good thing about it is that we all bring our unique talents to it. And so, what I may feel is perfection, you may feel different.
Mhm.
So, I think it's just the way that I see it is I try to let my students know that there is no right or wrong. There is no level where we feel like that you're going to actually get that perfect design or you're going to get that perfect play right. There is no perfected way to do it. You do it out of emotions. And that's the part where we get to the point where we go, oh, it has to be this way. If it's not this way, then, what else can I do to it?
Mhm.
And it has to be a point where you let it go,
Mhm.
and that's what I have to stress to myself as well as to my students is that, there will never be a point where you can look at it and say, oh, I've done everything perfect. Because when you look at hindsight, you might write something different. You might write a different ending. You might do a different hemline. You might do a different silhouette. There's never that stage where I feel like you get to where you're completely to the point where you just won't touch it or feel like that you need anything else to do to it. We're always going to have something else that we'll do to it. But you have to trust the process and let it go and let it speak to the people based upon your first emotional feeling about it. If
Mhm.
you feel that it's something that you want to design or create and you do it, and I often ask my students, and I tend to kind of jump around, but stay with me. I'm going somewhere, like the preacher say, hold on, I'm taking you somewhere. I tell my students, the reason why we create is so that our purpose is to get it out
Mhm.
because you never know who can benefit from what you do. That's the reason we create. And if you keep that in your mind, you realize that it's not necessarily for you, but it's happening through you.
Mhm.
And so, what we might think is imperfection for someone else is exactly what they needed
Right.
to perfect something in their life or to speak to their life. So there's that, that we try to stress that because if we're left to our own demise, we will just won't do nothing. We'll stay stagnant, like you say.
Right. And I definitely agree. Like you said, there's always going to be something more or something additional that we feel like we can add
Mm-hmm.
or change.
Mm-hmm.
And I think some things that I might offer as far as maybe mental health tips on how to combat perfectionism or just saying, you know what, this is enough in this moment, is really kind of setting some boundaries and normalizing rest and saying, I can pause right here. And then, of course, therapy, journaling, mindfulness practices, and then different ways to really help kind of challenge some of those internalized thoughts and voices that say it's not enough, or I'm, not enough, or it's never going to be enough, those types of things. And so finding ways to really model balance and celebrating creativity, like you said, progress and humanity over impossible standards, and just driving ourselves to constantly create more, do more.
Yeah. And if you're like me, we get ideas at 3 o'clock in the morning. We can wake up and have an idea, or at 3 o'clock in the morning, something wakes us up and there's that idea of how we could do that, that design better. So it's an ongoing process, but at some point you have to release it and let it be what it was intended to be.
I love something that you mentioned about ways that you encourage your students to look at things that they're creating or different designs. And something that we wanted to look at was what role can fashion, public art, or educational spaces play in sparking conversation that make it easier for people to reach out or to speak up or seek help, that sort of thing.
Yeah, I think what is important is that we have a sense of belonging. And with my students, I tend to make sure that they share in their experiences so that they don't feel isolated. You know, there's a lot of group projects that goes on that allows them to showcase their talents. Um, in this particular class, I teach is called the psychology of clothing. And so in the psychology of clothing, we talk about not only what is worn, but why it is worn. A lot of us tend to be, I don't, what can I say? We follow the trends. Whether they are trends for us or trends for another group of people, we tend to follow the trends. We don't want to feel isolated, or we don't want to feel not a part of being a group. So we follow the trends. So what I like to do is to have them start at a young age. They all send in baby pictures. And in those baby pictures, they describe who dressed them, where did the outfit come from, or something that gives them some ownership and some feeling good about
there's a deeper meaning behind it.
Yes, a meaning behind it, whether it was something that your grandmother gave you or something that was passed down to you. And so we talk about those things so that you can recognize just how important clothing is and why now you wear what you wear. They've discovered a lot of they tend to dress maybe like their parents, like their big brothers or sisters, that kind of thing that follows them throughout their life cycle. And now you're standing in front of polka dots and you don't understand why you like polka dots. But if you go back to that baby picture, all of that might connect. And then it's like a travel through time to see. Most of my students discover that at that tender age in middle school, when you're being influenced by a lot of the environment and your peers and friends and stuff, a lot of them tend not to be as I would say, as colorful as they were when they were smaller, and they embraced wearing yellow boots to the grocery store, right? So by the time we get to middle school, your influences start to come from your peers. and music and the entertainment. And so you can travel down a dark road, even in your clothing, your personality. You can start following a crowd and not realizing that being indoctrinated in you that now I no longer like color. So now you get a whole generation of students that just wear black, gray, blues, and you don't realize how that dopamine dressing affects you.
Right.
We all have days when we don't want to be bothered, so we'll put on "Don't Bother Me" clothing.
Mm-hmm.
And then those days, speaking from a fashion sense, those days when we're feeling good about ourselves and we put on some bright colored clothing and get one person to tell you you look good, then all of a sudden your whole aura changes.
Right.
So clothing has that effect on our emotional state, and it has an effect on how other people see us. So, and I want them to understand that, fashion plays a part in your personality and developing your personality. We often talk about how if you put a picture online, because we are such a socially driven society now, that if you put a picture online, you've been saving this dress and it's your birthday dress, and you put that picture online and nobody says anything about that picture. Nobody hits a like button on that picture. How do you feel? Now, that dress that initially was giving you so much pride, you hunted it down, you bought it, you look good in it, and nobody says anything to the fact that you look good. What do you do? How do you feel? Do you wear that dress again? Do you dare? How are we allowing somebody behind a computer to make us feel about ourselves? How does that all play a part? How does clothing play a part in how we feel about ourselves? And it shows. So that's the things we talk about in the psychology of clothing. And most of it I found that middle school age era is where, and we've been influenced a lot about like I say, about our friends, but in that middle school age is when we start to lose a lot of our personality and a lot of our kids.
It is such a critical part in the developmental stage in terms of becoming or just trying to figure out where we fit in and who we are, for sure. And your class sounds like it's amazing. By
It's
the
a
way,
good class. It's a great.
and you're
It's a
right.
great class.
Okay, yeah, clothing
Yeah.
and how we express ourselves, that's so important. And one thing I think that is so important that you said is about collaboration in those spaces,
Mm-hmm.
so that you
Mm-hmm.
all can have conversations about, where are you, or ways that people can express themselves. And especially when it comes to mental health and kind of checking in those ways, that really creates those safe spaces where those conversations can take place for sure.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then going back to another piece that you touched on was about isolation.
Mm.
And I think something that's really important is people really understanding how isolation is one of the biggest risk factors for suicide. And so creating connection is essential. In
Yes.
therapy, I focus on creating a safe space where people can bring their whole selves. So all the messy parts, all of the good parts, all of it
Mm-hmm.
is welcome. And just having that space where they know, you know what, I can come in, I'm not going to be judged. I can talk about whatever is on my mind and whatever I'm really needing to sift through, those sorts of things. And so that's so important for people outside of the therapy space to be able to make those types of connections and have a space where they feel like, you know what, someone can, they know me by name. So for example, I guess what I'll kind of go through is what are some
Mm-hmm.
ways that people can show up in those ways for others. So it could be something like calling someone by name. It could be noticing, say, if you have students who are absent, that sort of thing, or kind of affirming their contributions. All of those little pieces make a big difference because it's seeing
Mm-hmm.
someone and saying, I see you, that sort of thing.
Oh, yeah.
And so for marginalized students or artists, that sort of thing, or people who may already feel othered. It's about creating the sense of belonging in spaces where their identity isn't questioned or minimized, that sort of thing, making sure that no one feels invisible. And so definitely, I also like to encourage people to expand those social supports, their networks, and building community, again, in spaces where they feel seen, heard, and supported, not just kind of let me be somewhere just to be somewhere, but do I genuinely feel seen in these spaces and supported?
Yeah, I know I always start my class off. When I walk in the class, my first thing is, hello, beautiful people,
Mm-hmm.
and I'll check in and say, everybody all right today? Everybody good? Everybody's good. All right. Anything anybody want to share? Anything wonderful happened this weekend, or anything that you want to share? With students, no one wants to just bust out and say, well, I had a bad weekend and this happened or that happened. But I tend to like to think I keep the door open for conversation, just to let them know I care about you outside of this classroom. So I always start my class that way and do a check-in. And I have, fortunately, with the university, they have well-being days. So the well-being days is uh, a part of the schedule. We have two of them a semester where I put on the syllabus. Well-being day. Go hug a tree. It's not a place a day where you do studies or catch up on homework. It's a day designed for you to just get in touch with your mental health. And then I tell them at the beginning of the year, if you're having a bad day and you don't want to be a part of the world today, especially the class world today, just send me an email, send me a text, and let me know. Because we all have those days where, we just don't want to participate with people today, you know? And so I think with the schedules that they have it's very strenuous schedules, and then you have your social life, and it can be a lot. And it's specifically in the theater, we're always in the theater. Our hours can start at 8 o'clock in the morning and we can finish at 12 o'clock at night. So we're always there. So there's always that core group that you are usually around, and we check in with each other to make sure, you're good, and leave space for conversations to happen. And then when the class is getting ready to leave, I tell them, leave your location on your phones. Okay. Now, why do I do that? Okay. I do that every class. Leave your locations on your phones. Now, I do that because I watch a lot of 2020 and I watch a lot of Dateline, but I also do it because, there's a tendency for students to wander off in the middle of the night. And I told them today, I said, the thing we'll see y'all going into Walmart. There'll be a video of you going into Walmart and then you going out of Walmart, and that's it. So I want you to know that we care about you when you're outside of this class space. So leave your locations on your phone. Simple, but it lets them know I care. And if I forget to say it, they'll say, okay, we know, leave our location on our phones. And they go on off, into the world. But it's good to know that you have that support system that's outside of the classroom.
Absolutely.
So,
that is huge because you don't hear of it that often in a lot of spaces. And that means you are doing something incredibly right as far as cultivating safety in your classroom and showing them that they are a human being who you see beyond just a student who's expected to show up and submit.
Yeah, for sure.
That's huge. That's huge.
Yeah.
I want to talk a little bit about some of the warning signs that may potentially show up for some people. And you don't have to be a clinician to notice warning signs. Some early red flags might be withdrawal from social spaces. So For example, you might notice, hey, this person typically comes to these study groups, or they typically come to, class X amount of times and I haven't seen them in a while, or that sort of thing. Or maybe they're not putting their location on anymore. You might see changes in mood or energy. People could potentially lose interest in things that they normally love. Sometimes people start kind of giving away possessions or talking about being a burden or just expressing feelings of hopelessness. And then sometimes it shows up less directly. So again, someone who kind of stops showing up and someone that you might typically see, or it could be a person who is joking about not wanting to be here, that sort of thing. And then some of the best steps to take when you notice those things, it's not to diagnose, it's really engaging in care. So really asking someone directly but gently, I've noticed X, Y, and Z lately. I've noticed that you seem down. What's going on for you? Are you thinking about hurting yourself? And sometimes people fear using the word suicide, but
Yeah.
acting does not plant the idea. It actually shows, it's almost like it can startle some people like, oh, you see me. It shows that
Yeah.
you are enough to see their pain. And then from there, of course, the best action is, connecting them to help. So whether it's therapy or again, kind of memorizing that 988 suicide and crisis lifeline, but starting by being there to say you're not alone and that someone's willing to listen to you without judgment.
Mhm. Yeah, I agree. I don't, well, we're required to take a safety test and various tests at the beginning of the semester we're required to do. And if we hear anything that might be of concern for the student or the university community, we are obligated to report that. But I can't say that I've had students that exhibited anything that I felt like I needed to be concerned about. I've had students to, maybe break down, but it's usually, and dealing with first year students, you don't really know if it's their normal behavior or if there's something going on. So you have to get to know them and know their personalities. But I know last semester, my office mate, one of her students committed suicide. And I asked her if were there any signs that made you think that this may have happened, or did you see anything? And she indicated that she did not. And in fact, like you say, it's such a word with such a stigma that, it's hard for people to, I think, admit it,
Mhm.
that that is exactly what happened.
Right.
We'll say, we lost them, but when you ask, well, how did they die? Or, because students are naturally curious, what happened? How did it happen? And nobody wants to actually say the word,
Right.
so
Mhm. Yeah,
yeah.
it's definitely that
Mhm.
taboo around, that
Mhm.
not only the word, but mental health in general is so highly
Yeah.
stigmatized in some communities. And so often people are really struggling in silence. Yeah.
Yeah. Or they'll tell us to pray about it.
Right. Right. And then it's like,
Mhm.
okay, well, what do we do beyond that? It's
Beyond that.
these discussions. We normalize vulnerability and saying, no, I'm not okay, or it's
I'm not
okay
okay.
to not be
Mhm.
okay, and I need some help. And that's not a weakness. Yeah.
Yes, I
Mhm.
agree. I agree.
Thank you so much for this great conversation. And I feel that we covered a lot of ground and just want to briefly open the floor if any of the attendees have any questions or any insights that they'd like to provide. Again, this is a safe space. This isn't something that you're required to comment on. I realize this is a sensitive topic, but just want to provide space and opportunity if anyone would like to come off of you and say anything about anything that they may have learned or anything that really impacted their way of thinking about this topic.
I want to add, if I may, that we have glorified uh, Project Runway. And Project Runway is such a big in the youth community that we think fashion happens. You can make this entire fashion design in an hour, right? They've convinced us that it doesn't take long. We can do it. And with fast fashion, we wake up in the middle of the night and we push a button, and next day we have red boots. We are such a demanding society that we are putting pressures on the fashion designers. Because just like actors and creatives and fashion designers, you are as good as your last product. That is what they remember you by. What have you done for me lately? Right? So that in the past, when we were connected to a designer, we were connected. Run DMC was connected to Adidas, right? They didn't go from Adidas to Nike or to another designer. They were connected. Usually when we were Ralph Lauren people, we wore Ralph Lauren, But now, because we have at our fingertips, and we can order what we want, when we want it, how we want it. The designers are looking at this as, how do we stay relevant, right? And that's a lot of pressure. When you work for 6 months putting out a design project and a design line, and it goes down the runway, and by the time you walk down the runway with your clapping, that design is being replicated in China or wherever, So that gives the people option not to choose you. They can choose a cheaper version of that, that goes along with the Louis Vuitton bags, the red bottom shoes, all of that. We can now be whoever we want to be. And I often ask my class, if you saw somebody with a Marc Jacobs purse, and based upon that purse, what do you think about that person? What is that person trying to tell you? How they feel about themselves or anybody else? What are they trying to portray? If you know that purse is fake, do you feel like now that person is fake? Right? What are your ideas about that person? You are making judgment on what that person is wearing, what that person is carrying. We make judgments about that. So for fashion designers, it's hard. It's hard. If I work 4 days on a dress, and then, you can go out and buy the dress in 15 minutes. That's hard for me as a fashion designer. So that becomes pressure. And we see these designers on Project Runway breaking down, and we are looking at that as entertainment. If we break them down to the point where they're crying, oh, that's entertainment now. But we're not thinking about the repercussions of that mental pressure that we're putting on them and anyone else, trying to do that.
Absolutely.
Now, even Latoya, and I'm gonna stop talking in a few minutes. God, this is how I go down the rabbit hole in my class. But even if you can get ChatGPT to write a whole book for you, that could happen, and you go off and you get a Nobel Prize for your book, or you on the list, and then you're sitting at home and you're struggling trying to get your book out, and it's taking you time to get your book out, and someone else has gone on and reaping the benefits of the harvest. And it's hard being a creative in this day and age when technology is crazy. It's crazy. So now I'm going to be quiet. Okay, slow down.
No, I'll just add, like you were saying, a lot of those are really this additional, almost like unrealistic expectations and pressure that are placed upon people. And then seeing where someone wrote in the chat, it looks like Tiffany from the New Chapter. She says, I appreciate the notion of art being something you get out versus get right. Remembering that we are simply producing from a place of expression reduces the pressure some may feel in the perfectionism matrix.
Yes.
And Sunny from the IOTA chapter says, absolutely same, and that someone else may really need what we created. It's not just for us, it's through us. I think that's so powerful to remember,
Yes.
and
Mhm.
really using creative expression as a coping tool to say, hey, I need to get this out. And maybe it's something that you need in the moment for yourself, but also, like you said, it could be something that someone else
That's
is
someone
getting
else.
through
Mhm.
you. Mm-hmm.
For
That's so
sure. I would
powerful.
like to see a fashion line with 988
Okay.
as the across the
Mm-hmm.
front,
Mm-hmm.
right? You could have it like I remember and then I'm gonna be quiet. I remember when during the AIDS epidemic, when TLC used condoms in their fashion. You
Mm-hmm.
know, that let us know that it was okay to
Mm-hmm.
talk about sex, number one, and also to be safe,
Right,
you
right.
know, in eliminating an issue or
Mm-hmm.
eliminating a disease. So I think going forward, we could use what we know as designers, as authors, as artists to promote that it's okay to share and to talk and to be vulnerable, you know.
Right.
So put that 988 across your chest and
Mhm.
let somebody ask you, what's that about? So that
Right.
you can share.
Do
Yeah,
your
it's okay
students
now. So I'm
ever
done.
have projects where they have to create things, or what does that look like for this particular course?
Exactly, they do. They have to create a sustainable fashion company. So
Okay.
this gives them that small group. They're divided into groups, and they all have to come up with a sustainable
Mhm.
product, right? So that gives the business major a chance to work out the business plan. It
Mhm.
gives the creative one a chance to design the product
Yeah.
or to actually make the product. I insist they go to the maker's lab, and in the maker's lab, they're using the 3D printer, they're using sewing machines. So they're actually creating something. So it gives everybody in the group some input. There has to be someone that does the how is the threads or the fabrics going to be produced? Who's going to transport it? Who's going to merchandise it? How will it appear in retail? How will you get that product back to your customer? And I've had some really, really nice products. I mean, like sneakers that you no longer like or no longer wear. They will go and pick up your sneakers. They will redesign the sneakers, put some artistic work on the sneakers, and then they'll deliver the sneaker back to you. You know, things of that nature where they have to create together. So that being together and creating together gives them a hub where they can, you know, get a chance to know each other. Because that's what, you know, the university life is all about, is working with others, meeting others, the social aspect of it. So they get a chance to do all of that. And I've got some great products from that project alone. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
No, I love it. I was just thinking about how, say, during Mental Health Awareness Month, maybe people could incorporate certain messages into their product or whatever they
Oh,
might be
that's a great
creating.
idea. Oh,
Mhm.
let me write that down. Great idea. Thank you.
Power
Mhm.
energy
Okay.
of coming together with ideas of how we can continue this conversation on, because
Mhm.
our September is Suicide Awareness Month. As
Mhm.
we have determined through the conversation, this is something that impacts us in so many different ways, not only those in the creative field, but also those who just living life, because life isn't always fun and games. And I sort of feel a little bit bad because I am a Project Runway girl. Um,
Mhm.
in this current season, I was a little bit disappointed that we had two designers who hail from North Carolina that
Yeah.
fortunately are not on the show any longer. But you're right, it is a pressure cooker, and I do
It's
turn
pressure.
every Friday to see what's going to happen next. I want
Right.
to share a little bit of information for those of us that want to know more about what resources are available. I know we did mention the awareness of the 988, so just fall back on that. This September is Suicide Prevention Awareness Month, and that the September 10th is World Suicide Prevention Day, which was established actually more than 20 years ago. Just a little bit of statistics according to the World Health Organization concerning the impact that suicide has in terms of a global health problem. It's not just something that impacts us in ways where someone is gone. This is a serious problem, and you can see
Yeah.
how the population has been impacted. And just um, most recent numbers in 2021, how many people die, and how that really comes down to how many are taken every 11 minutes. But there are resources available, and just going to go back to what we were talking about, the 988 number. So that is something that is available for anyone that needs someone to talk to. It's not like the 911. So you have the 988, and then there's other numbers. So again, I just want to say thank you to our presenter and our mental health therapist, Shalandra Holland, and our esteemed sister, Pamela Bond, and all the ways that she's making a difference, not only in her work as a designer, but also as a work as a professor, because you just exemplify what we as Gamma Xi Phi aim to do. We aim to make impacts in those lives through the arts. And so again, I want to say thank you to all my brothers, sisters, and gammas that joined us on this call. And I will now ask Brother Hunter Irby, who's our current national president, if he can just say some words and provide us a little bit more of encouragement about what we're here to do as far as Under the I Swear and the We Grow initiative.
So, hi, my name is Hunter Irby. I'm the current president of Gamma Xi Phi. It's great and nice to see all of you. I first want to thank everyone here for being a part of this event. It's very great to see more faces that I have met, like Ms. Sandra Hans. It's very nice to meet you, as well as everyone who may be watching this video in the future. I want to give thanks to y'all for being here, and thank you for just tuning in. And for Gamma Xi Phi itself, we are a fraternity that's wonderful great for artists, creatives. We have a very wide expanse of art coverage. So that can be from teachers to graphic designers to runway designers, gastronomy, physical art, digital art, everything under the sun, writers, etc. So we have a very large or a very wide pool for artists to come here and appreciate our fraternity as well as become a part of our fraternity. As for how to reach us, you can reach us over at gammaziphi.com, GAMMAXIPHI, gammaziphi.com, as well as our Instagram, which is just gammaziphi, same spelling, all one word together. So it's very easy to find us out here. Over at Gamma Xi Phi, correct, Brother Rashid. We would love to hear more from every artist and try to get more in contact with us. We're on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, so please look us up. We do several events. They range from service, like this one today, wellness, trying to learn more about mental health and protection of both physical, mental, and spiritual side of things on several members' plates, edification, trying to make sure to try and get more knowledge out there regarding the arts. Advocacy, we like to advocate for the arts. That's what we do, and that's who we are about. So that's what we want to protect out here in the world, as well as recognition. So, you might get recognized to be a part of both our fraternity, as well as getting a focus on several different artists, because in this day and age, it's very hard to get more artists to be more in the limelight. So we cover, and that encapsulates all of I Swear, but it is a wide range of things to do that we do, and that we are trying to expand more as we grow, which is the expansion of both Gamma Xi Phi, our membership, and what we do in our communities. And it's just great to be here and to see everyone here in this wellness event. It's wonderful to see your faces. Thank you for being here, y'all.
Thank you again. And I'm gonna ask Brother Rashid to come off mute and just give us a little bit more information about the September 25th event, if you wouldn't mind.
Sure, Gamma Xi Phi is growing. We invite anybody, anywhere across this great nation and this world to join us on Thursday, September 25th, 2025, at 7 p.m. Eastern Time to meet people that you see here on this screen in a casual environment. And we're going to be discussing our own journeys in Gamma Xi Phi and what our respective membership pathways have looked like. And if you are a member of Gamma Xi Phi, your potential invitees are most certainly invited. If you're not a member of Gamma Xi Phi in the sound of my voice, you are invited. So please join us virtual via Google Meet. And you can visit our website for any membership information before then, or you can just email me at grow@gammaziphi.com, and we will add you to that calendar invitation and get you whatever information you need. Thank you.